Kavi is going to talk to us about burnout. And I already feel it.
Don't we all? I hope you all can hear me okay. I forgot to bring a headset. I thought as I was preparing this and leaving this morning, I thought maybe I probably get to bring that just in case. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Okay, cool. All right. I was going to show a little video in the interest of time. I'm going to put that link in the text box here. It's probably a video I'm sure most of you have seen before. So if you'd like a little laugh, I was going to preface this video with if we don't take care or address things like the burnout we may be on the road to experiencing, we might have an experience like what happened in this video. So I'm going to put that in there. If you want to take a look at that after that, maybe smile or laugh a little bit. Again, I'm sure it's a video many of you have seen. So is it okay? Let's see, I'm going to try to share my screen here. I wasn't sure, Chloe, if I should have sent this to you ahead of time. I just have a little bit of a presentation that I'd like to just reference as we go here.
No, you're fine. I just made you co-host. Are you able to share your screen now?
I'm sure I will be. Give me just one sec. Okay. Can you all see that first slide, burnout? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to go over a couple of things here, and there might be a few points where, for the sake of time, again, I mean, I'm fine if people respond using the audio, but if typing in the chat box would be easier, that would be appropriate as well. So I'm going to give a few minute presentation here on burnout. A couple of things I want to go over. I had this thought, why a mini session on burnout? Obviously, it's probably applicable to most of us in the prevention field or in our different work, not to mention probably at times at home. Over this last week, as I was touching up a few things for this, I gave my wife a burnout assessment, and she was using it from the perspective of being a mom, and she is like way burned out. So it's not just with work. Burnout happens in lots of aspects of our life. But so why a mini session on burnout? I want to share briefly about the law of entropy. Entropy is the degree of disorder. So law of entropy basically says that left unchecked, disorder will increase over time. So another way of saying that is life unattended to moves towards chaos. So I don't know about you, but I would love the don't do any exercise or worry about what you eat and lose 15 pounds kind of plan. That'd be wonderful. But entropy doesn't allow that. If we don't actively work on our physical health or nutrition or things like that, we're not automatically going to get the physique or be at the weight that we want. If all of us left our current rooms right now and didn't come back for 5 years and came back to it, we wouldn't find the room in the exact same state that we left it in. There'd be a lot of dust, probably some spider webs, or some of the pictures on the wall might have fallen off. So life unattended to moves towards chaos. So with that, burnout does happen, and we often drift due to the law of entropy. If we're not actively working on something, we're gonna drift some bit. We're gonna slide. We're gonna probably take some steps towards disorder or chaos. So with that, we're gonna talk about a couple of different things. Going to kind of define burnout and identify some common signs. Spend a little bit of time talking about some initial responses, which will very much seem like some practical tools, I think, but I'm a big believer in how we initially respond to something really is going to maybe determine how quick or how far we'll go, how quick we'll get back on our feet with something, and then we'll spend just a few minutes discussing some practical tools for coping and for prevention. I have a disclaimer, however. I hope that this is a helpful presentation for you, and you'll certainly take some things from this that you can use to help you as you cope with burnout or things like that, or recognizing burnout either in yourself or in others. There'll be more than one or two things that I'll cover with you, and I would really encourage you to resist the urge or temptation to say, you know what, I'm going to do all these things. I don't know if any of you do that. I've been guilty of that in the past, where I'll go to a workshop or training, take pages of notes, or say, oh, I'm going to go back and do all these different things, and I end up doing hardly any, if any of them. And so I would encourage you, as you go through this, maybe be open-minded and be thinking about what's one or two things I might take away from this that could help me as I'm working on, you know, more job satisfaction or overcoming burnout or things like that. So, okay. So here's a very basic definition of burnout: a complete depletion of energy or strength. Oh man, I'm not even sure how to pull up the comments while I'm in screen sharing mode. So that being a definition, I'm curious, and if you could type on in the chat box, if you could type some words that you might associate with burnout, some synonyms, some things, some other words that you would describe as part of burnout. Thank you. Exhaustion, stress, tired, loss of focus, fatigue, frazzled, tired again. Thank you very much. All really, I think, accurate descriptions. Numb. As we go back here. A lot of words you have on there already. So all these different words, again, ways to describe burnout, often affecting us in these different domains of our life: mentally, emotionally, socially, relationally, physically, spiritually, occupationally. And I'm sure if I asked you if you feel burnout in these different areas, most of you would probably raise your hands in most of these areas. I know it does for me. So as we look at some common signs, I would love it if for this one, if you'd be willing to respond via audio. What are some common physical signs of burnout that maybe you've experienced, or we can maybe put this on there as well, maybe that you've seen in a friend? Some common physical signs of burnout that you've experienced.
Headaches.
Absolutely.
Increased cortisol.
What was that, Marco?
Increased cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Sleeplessness.
Yes.
Lack of focus.
Absolutely. What about some emotional signs that you're experiencing burnout?
Well, I think of eating, which I think, or eating all the sweets or treats or whatever it is you might enjoy. And that I feel falls in emotional for me at times.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy.
Quick to anger.
Quick to anger.
Anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
Sadness probably too.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadness, feeling down. How about some behavioral signs of burnout?
Short-tempered.
Mm-hmm.
Less productive. Yeah, less productive.
Okay.
More vices.
Yeah. What do you mean by that, Kelly?
Well, we're all in the substance abuse field, but like maybe more wine at night, or I don't smoke, but I know that I have a really good friend and she does sometimes. And when we're stressed, she smokes more.
Absolutely.
More junk food. I mean, is probably one that everybody can relate to, maybe, especially this time of year.
Right. Absolutely. Real quick, are you seeing the slide that says common signs right now, everybody? Is it stuck on the other one? Okay, that's good.
It's stuck, Kavi.
All right, we'll go back. There we go. Okay.
We can see that now.
I know for me, a lot of the time in the past, it's been my time distribution. Somewhat getting to work a few minutes later, but more it's been, and this is, I can tell usually when it gets to be pretty drastic. The thing about burnout is, again, this whole idea of drift, it happens kind of slowly. It moves towards disorganization or chaos. But mine often takes or manifests through, I get that notification once a month, how much time I've been on my phone that week. I hate that notification every Sunday. I need to turn it off because I feel guilty every time it comes on. You spend this many hours on, this average hours on your phone every single day. And when it starts getting higher, I'm like, okay, I'm probably not using my time very wisely and avoiding some things or things like that. All very common signs of burnout. And so I think we're aware of a lot of these. I would suggest a strategy in helping with burnout to maybe do some regular or quick little check-ins. How am I feeling physically? How am I feeling emotionally? What have my behaviors been like lately? Because a lot of times we'll kind of avoid that and avoid thinking about it, especially as it pertains to work. And as we get into maybe some tools or strategies for how to cope with it, being more aware, working on the self-awareness muscle is going to be one of the greatest things that'll help us. So I would invite you and encourage you to do some regular check-ins, maybe in some of these areas, physical, emotional, behavioral. Have there been any significant changes or patterns in your behavior or your emotions or things like that? It can be a good clue. So I want to look at, for a few minutes here, the last little bit of our time together, some ways to respond, which are in of themselves some strategies, but then some just practical tools that you could work on implementing. So I've kind of summarized this into three different things. This part of it, the responding, comes directly from the understanding, study, and practice as a mental health practitioner, because I recognize that there's a power and control on how we respond to things. And our capacity to cope well with things like burnout is increased and strengthened when we practice some of these response strategies. So there's three ones I want to go over with you: normalizing, acceptance, and being willing to be vulnerable. Okay. So with normalizing, throw these up there. It's gotten to the point where I'm working here to pay for prescriptions I now require to cope with working here. I don't know if any of you have experienced that. I won't ask, but this other one is certainly one that I think to myself sometimes. It's nice to come back to work after a long weekend of stressing about work. So why do you think normalizing that burnout happens, especially in this field? Why do you think normalizing would be helpful or could help a person who is experiencing burnout? I'd love to hear any thoughts on that.
So you can keep working.
Then the people don't feel alone either.
Yeah. One of my patients currently is a man who spends some split time in California and Idaho. He's a CPA and works in California during the tax season. And he was in a situation this last year where he was in Southern California when the country shut down. And shortly thereafter, there was rioting taking place in basically his backyard. He ended up coming back to Idaho, and he just had this spike in anxiety. And he was trying to work remotely. He had an assistant in California helping him, and he was trying to continue working and doing people's taxes and things like that, even with the extended deadline through July. Around that same time, he and his family chose to buy a new house and renovate it. And his father, who has some pretty significant health challenges, and one of his sisters were going to come live with him. And this is all going on. July 15th came around, tax season was officially over. He barely made some deadlines. And 5 days later, he went and picked up his dad and sister, moved him in. And he came back to see me after I haven't seen him for a couple months. And He said, I can't get up in the morning. I'm so stressed. I have so much anxiety. This isn't normal for me. This doesn't usually happen. And we actually spent a good amount of time just normalizing it, going through all those things that happened. I said, no wonder you're feeling anxious right now. And it seems like such a simple thing, but he had not even entertained that idea. And once he did, he was like, wow, that doesn't make it easier necessarily, but now that I've like realized that's what it is, like it makes sense, and I can kind of keep going. And so normalizing is very, very effective. Here's some examples of ways to normalize. I've been working to meet important deadlines. It makes sense I would feel this way. I've been going and going without much of a break, and I don't get much recognition. No wonder I've been feeling more checked out. I'm not enjoying my job the way I used to, so of course I'm going to be feeling more burned out. So just little ways of normalizing it. It helps us feel less alone, and it's really helping us do these next two strategies, which the first one being acceptance. You might recognize the text on the screen there as part of the Serenity Prayer. In basically any 12-step group, the 12 steps are pretty similar. And does anybody remember what the first step in most of those groups is? Think about AA or something like that.
Admit you have a problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Admitting that we have a problem, that you're powerless. Oftentimes, powerless before God or things like that. And that's part of this idea of acceptance. It's really, it's virtually impossible to work towards change without recognizing, when it comes to like addictions, that a person has become powerless. But part of that is this idea of acceptance. When you understand yourself, your choice about how to live your life is hugely different. I have a little self-disclosure here, and some of you I think have heard me tell this story before. I have generalized anxiety disorder myself. I had a panic attack while playing basketball 7.5 years ago, and it kind of threw me for a loop. It was so significant and severe, I thought I was dying. And I had already been in the mental health field, and while I was trying to search for answers, what was wrong with me, the idea came to my head was that a panic attack? Is that what that was? And growing up, my parents never talked about anxiety or things like that, so I wasn't familiar with it. I had no way of expressing what I felt as a young boy and different experiences I'd had. So 7.5 years ago, here I'm married, I'm working, I'm through school and all this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden I had this experience, which is pretty significant for me. And the next year and a half was a time of some pretty significant denial on my part. It was kind of this idea of, I know how to cope. I know the strategies. I take care of myself. I do self-care. I don't have this. And it wasn't until I finally accepted that what it was is that I was able to start coping better with it more effectively. And I cope very well with it today. And so acceptance is very powerful. This idea of and with this, it would be simply acknowledging, okay, I've noticed some of my emotions are different than they've been. My behaviors, I'm withdrawing, or I'm turning devices. Maybe it makes sense to normalize. It makes sense that I've been feeling pretty checked out with work, and then practicing acceptance. Man, I think I'm feeling pretty burned out right now. And there's a power in acceptance. Certainly, it is in the recovery journey with substance abuse problems and things like that, and it's very helpful with burnout as well. This last one, being willing to be vulnerable, and you see on there some prompts. I would encourage you to open up, tell someone, seek supervision, ask for support, someone who you trust, so you're not carrying that alone, and reaching out to that someone who can be supportive of you. Last thing, I'll throw one more slide up here real quick. Some practical strategies and prevention. So again, those first three of normalizing, acceptance, and being willing to be a little bit vulnerable are really going to set the stage for how well you're going to cope with burnout, as you're able to practice those things in your ways. So I'll throw up here some different strategies. I'm sure a lot of these you've probably thought about or heard of, spoken of before, but this is maybe a list where I'd encourage you to look at this and take one or two of these things on and try to work on them a little bit, be more intentional about them. Being willing to say no to new things, doing mini retreats at home. That could be things like reading, a bubble bath, having maybe a candy stash, or I don't know, a sweet stash. Creating no work zones in your home where the phone stays out or you're not allowed to check email there, things like that, having little mini retreats in your home. certainly finding an accountability partner that goes with that whole being vulnerable. Now that can be someone to, in this sense, to maybe check in with you, how you're doing on some of the little goals that you're setting to try to kind of get back out of a funk that you're in or find more motivation or things like that. Someone who's checking in with you. So a supportive, engaging or encouraging accountability partner. I would encourage you to maybe think about asking for some different responsibilities, whether that's at work or maybe if it's at home even, negotiating with the family on if there's a task that you've been doing regularly that it's just maybe adds to the stress that you're feeling. See if you can't rework some of the duties or things like that at home, certainly in the workplace as well. Sleep, exercise, diet, nutrition, making that a priority, spending some meaningful time planning some strategies there, and not just planning things to do, but how you're going to carry them out. This next one, schedule regular breaks and use them with purpose. So plan what you'll do on your break. Don't just say, I'm going to take a break at 10 o'clock. Plan what you're actually going to do. And if it's something that you might look forward to, I think you might find, sometimes you might find, you know what, I'm going to try to busy myself a little bit more to get to that break that I'm really looking forward to. So plan some meaningful breaks. Mindfulness is always an effective strategy when dealing with stress. Breathing, meditation, body scans. The internet has great resources. You can go on YouTube and find guided imagery prompts and things like that. Practicing meaningful and intentional self-care. I think a lot of the times that something I've been guilty of is I'd say, oh, I'm doing this thing because it's part of my self-care, but then I realized it didn't really contribute to the self-care. Golf was one of those things for me. I thought, oh yeah, this is this great thing that I'm going to go do, except I usually ended up leaving the golf course even more upset than when I got there. So I had to kind of look at that, and you know what, it's not bad to do it every once in a while, but maybe when I'm feeling a little less stressed, hit the golf course. And so it's important to be meaningful and intentional about your self-care. And then again, another plug for being open, being willing to be a little bit vulnerable and talking about your situation with people that you trust. I lied. There's one last slide here just on recovery. You know, in our field, we are doing our best to prevent, but we all have experiences with people who have struggled and who are trying to come out of some deep holes that they've been in and working on their own recovery. And I would encourage you, as you are honest with yourself and accepting that you are experiencing some burnout, maybe allow that to shift in your mind a little bit to this perspective of, all right, I'm feeling burned out and I'm going to work on recovery. And so with that, I would encourage you to maybe think about what your burnout recovery plan could be. What 1 to 2 things are you going to work on? Maybe of that list I shared or some other things. Who could be your accountability partner or partners? What's the first step you need to focus on, and taking it to step by step after that? What's the next step? I hope that this was of some value to you, and as you're experiencing symptoms of burnout, that you're honest with yourself. Please normalize it. It is very normal, but practice that, those strategies of acceptance, being a little bit vulnerable, and start creating your recovery plan. And I hope, and I certainly wish you luck with that. Again, I know a lot of people on this call. There's many who I've never met before, and I admire you for your work you do. And I know this work is difficult, and learned a lot from all of you. I'm sure you could probably give some great strategies on self-care. I would encourage you to do so and network with each other on that, what's working for you. But I appreciate the time. Go ahead and check that video out. I think what I'll also do is send an email afterwards to David or Chloe. I found a website that has some different assessments of burnout. You kind of see to what extent you might be burned out and things like that. And so it's something you could take a look at, do some online assessments. But thank you for the time, and it was great to visit with you, and would love to do this again sometime.
Could you share the PowerPoint with us as well?
Absolutely.